So the topic today is the holidays and how we show up for ourselves, and specifically around family, and how we define family can vary, but those people we consider family. And sometimes it's even with our blood family, sometimes is more of a challenge than our chosen. I mean, uh, people that aren't necessarily related. Um, I had a little bit of taste of that recently, where I was with my mother, who will probably never listen to this, so I'm not going to say anything she wouldn't want to hear. But um, and it's not even about her. But I was with my mother, and I'm not usually. She lives across the country, so I was with my mother. It was a couple of weeks ago, so it was a little bit early for the holidays. But I found myself inside. I'll just say triggered, like old things, old um, defense patterns of sometimes againstness or protection from long ago came up. And um, I realized I had a kind of a big awareness that it's not personal about her, or we'll just say it's our challenges with people or parents aren't personal about them, as we know theoretically. And I've known theoretically for a long time, but I really got it super deep inside. Go like, um, and especially happened related to my daughter, who's now 16, who I know I was there for her upbringing, and she is surrounded by love, as much love as I could ever imagine someone getting, like from not from her parents, but her universe, which goes across the world. And I see her going through some of the challenges inside. And when she tells me, I'm like, wait a second, how does that happen? Because you got a lot of love. How does that other thing happen? And so it hit me that um, it's not personal. Like hers is not really personal about me. Mine is not personal about my parents. It is this human hole that we try to, or we need to fill. And sometimes or the lessons that we're to learn, and we find them in the people that are outside of us. And it seems like it's mostly directed at our parents, at least for me and many people. So then, if we have these lessons and learning and yearning and expectations and all these things from our parents or our family, how do we then show up at a holiday with them and be our best self, or be the self that we want to bring, right? Man, it seems like it's so hard. So I want to just talk about a few tips that I was thinking about, and a process that I ran across today that I thought would be perfect for this uh, topic. And then we'll open it up for sharing. So, thinking about tips that work for me when I picture myself in a family type of setting. Um, well, let me just take one step back. So, if the holidays are coming up, so Thanksgiving is this week here in the United States. If we're going to go, there's this holiday, and the question is, do we want to get together with other people for the holidays? And then, do you offer yourself that choice, or do you feel compelled to go, expected to go, like there's a shoulds on there? Or do you think, oh, I don't want to go, or do want to go? There's so much in that decision. So say if we do want to go, some tips that could potentially be helpful, and that we practice a lot in MSIA and heartfelt. So practicing gratitude. And I said that today. I was like, oh yeah, that would be really good. That'd be a good one. And some of these are like, if I sometimes I'm with my family, like I feel like with that fight, flight, freeze, appease. When I'm in that mode, I don't always. I'm not always clearly thinking about like, what are my options? How am I going to be like my best self here? So I got to make it really simple. So practice gratitude is one. Um, it helps me when I think of family gatherings as a ministry, both to myself and to them. Like if I go, I don't really want to go, I could do something else or nothing, but I want to go because uh, it's a service to me and to the people that I care about. Um, Especially right now with the in the States anyway, the political climate. Uh, Sometimes we can have a very different opinion than other people across the table from us. So you might decide these are things I'm going to talk about, I'm willing to talk about, or not willing to talk about. Sometimes they just have to be off the table for the couple hours you're together. And ahead of time, if we can think about respecting people's differences, and you know, I don't know. I'll like to hear from you guys about these topics, but that can be a challenging one, just to not talk about certain things that might be important to you because everybody there might not be available to talk about in the way that feels supportive to you. So creating a space of loving and gratitude and hopefully connection. Um, and I'm also aware that sometimes I have higher expectations for the family than maybe that they're uh, available to or willing to go, right? And MSI, a lot of us, and with the workshops that we've done and things, that we're used to sharing at a very deep level. And I find it not really typical of most families. So sometimes there can be some feelings about that, or disappointment, or having expectations. So, going in with being aware of your expectations. Observing is a good key. Uh, Observing your expectations, observing your desires, your fears, all the things that are kind of going on in your mind. And sometimes it's just observing instead of jumping in and trying to explain yourself or make things right or different. And as Ron and Mary and USM say, how you relate to the issue is the issue, right? So other people, specifically our family, are just who they are. And we may not prefer it that way, or we may not like it, or maybe we love it. And it's all okay. And how I relate to them or what's happening at the holidays is the issue. So I want to offer just a reminder that there's some really great tools on the MSIA website. So if you go to the MSIA, not right now, but later if you want, if you go to msia.org, and then under practice, it'll say practical spiritual tools. And there's a whole list of really great tools like forgiveness, I love this, clear your energy field, seeding. And the one that stood out to me this afternoon was embracing your petty tyrant. So it's a 6-step process that I'm just going to run us through here. It'll just take a few minutes. But the website has some great tools. So if you go, oh my gosh, I'm not my best right now, or I'm going to go I'm preparing to go to the family dinners or get-togethers, or even when you come home, you might want to just go, hey, let's go. There's lots of tools and things that you do, but just want to remind you that that section is there, and you might go and find whatever stands out to you in the moment. Okay, so embracing the petty tyrant. So a petty tyrant to me is like someone, it doesn't have to be the same person. Sometimes like that petty tyrant will show up in more than one person, but say it's a person that no matter what you do, like you can't change them and they don't go away. Like they're just always there. And sometimes you might have a petty tyrant and then at one job, and then you go, I'm going to switch jobs because I don't like that. And you go there, and that similar petty tyrant is also there. So it's this person, and maybe it's more than one person, but sometimes it's one major person at a time. And you don't have control over them. You can't do anything, and they're there. So they're usually there to teach you a lesson. And then sometimes when you learn the lesson, all of a sudden that same person could be turn into a friend, and the petty tyrant just kind of dissolves. Okay, so on the MSIA website, this is the process. Because in our training as spiritual warriors, we want the critics. We want a petty tyrant in our lives, somebody who is able to bug us with impunity, because these people always show us where we are going in relation to our intention. As a result, they can help keep us in line with our intention. Take some time to answer the following questions in writing, and you don't have to do it in writing, but I'll just read it. They will help you to focus on an area inside of yourself, inside your spirit, that are affected by your petty tyrant. You may also want to ask a friend or a spouse to read your responses and offer suggestions for handling your petty tyrant. Step 1, identify a petty tyrant in your life, past or present. Step 2, how does the petty tyrant challenge your self-importance? Step 3 is describe what that self-importance is. Step 4, instead of reacting negatively, how can you respond in a centered way? And step 5, close your eyes and practice using ruthlessness, which is the sword of truth, the sword of the heart, to cut away the illusion. If you need to forgive yourself first, do it. And one way is to say to yourself, I forgive myself for judging myself for fill in the blank. And when you experience the presence of spirit inside of you, open your eyes. And then step 6, when you finish, spend some time writing, reflect on your experience, what you've learned, and what you still need to do. And since we're together, we'll have time to talk. So whenever you're ready. Okay.
Well, my name's Norma Jean Jeannie, and my family of origin, there's really only one of us. I have one brother left. That's it. So the family that I get together with is his children and family. I have no children, so I'm singular. But a lot of times I've had to work through a lot of stuff since I've moved here. I've been here 5 years because the self-importance is I want to be acknowledged and loved, and I'm pretty much ignored by the kids. You know, the one kid might come over and, the kind of a leader, and give me a quick hug and hi, glad you're here. And then that's pretty much it. And so my self-importance is, hey, I'm here, I'm important. Don't you get that? And I used to resent that. But I've tried a lot of different things. And okay, so how do I? One thing that worked the very best was just going into observation, because I really don't have anything in common with these kids other than, their dad, and he's pretty quiet. But when I just kept saying my ministerial blessing over and over and over, silently, of course, that kind of put me in another place. And I had the best time that when I was able to do that, but it was hard to stay focused. I think what throws me the most is that the energy of this family, it's just so chaotic. And, I live in a lot more balance than they do. And yeah, so, so yes, I have to work on forgiveness, letting go of expectations, and just be happy that they invite me, and I'm happy that my niece brings the family, their family, there's a lot of them together, to like once a month she has a gathering, and just focus on that stuff instead of how they're supposed to treat me. And that kind of has been an issue all my life. In my family of origin, I was pretty much ignored. I was kind of the invisible child unless I was being a rebel. And I think I came in this lifetime to really, I'm a Leo, so self-importance, I think, is kind of a trait of the Leo. And I think that I came in to, learn to acknowledge myself and be important to myself. And, it's an inside job. I think that's my lesson. And when I look out there, I'm usually very disappointed. If I get something out there, it's like gravy. So that's all I have. So thanks for letting me share.
Thank you.
Open to feedback if you have something.
Yeah, it sounds like you had some good feedback for yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Focus on gratitude and, what the lessons are for you,
Right. Not a victim.
Yeah, it is hard. Someone asked for examples of a petty tyrant. So my examples would be, it shows up in my mom a lot, but I'll say she criticizes me, but she would probably say like, I'm just offering like loving feedback. Comes across as criticism to me, like don't squint, put your glasses on, like constantly. Okay. Um, or doing things a certain way. So she has a way to kind of like pick at me that it bugs me. So I would say she's my critic. Um, and she bugs me. And when I'm not feeling, it's a great barometer for me because I know how I am inside with me by how much I allow her. She's been doing it for my whole life. So how much it bugs me is my barometer of my internal state. If I'm joyful and I'm grateful and I'm not expecting anything from her, I feel solid in myself. I remember I don't need anything from her, and I'm accepting her just as she is. And I don't need her like when I was little, maybe I could have used some like, hey, I love you just as you are. You never need to change. You are amazing. And that might have been great, to hear from her back then. But right now, like I remember JR saying, like, find out what you want other people to tell you and tell yourself so you don't need them. Right. So it's not relying on them. So she is my petty tyrant, and it's a good barometer of how I am. So she goes home. I don't have to live with her anymore. She goes home, and then I am still with me and either the upset or the not upset. So yeah, it's if I just think of it as like, oh, it's just feedback, um, and it's not personal to her. When I make it personal to her, like she is my mother, and a mother or a father in this lifetime has certain requirements, and they are not meeting up. And so for the rest of my life, I am going to be mad. I'm going to be hurt. I'm going to be empty. I'm going to be needy and want, like, okay, well, that's one choice. But if I go, it's not her, it's me. It's about me and my lessons. When I take the ownership, then and only then can I change. Can I feel free? Can I um, not be pushed around by the winds of other people or my assumptions about what other people are thinking about me or any of that. And when I was telling you this new real, like the experience of it's not personal about her. I was looking at it more like, when you're driving on the highway and some lanes, like on the markers on each side of the lanes, like there's grooves. And so if you get too close to that groove, you start going do 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 do, and it's like, hey, wake up, getting a little bit over. And you might drift on the other side and go do 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 do. Like, okay, get in the middle. So when I'm with my mother, either in with her or inside of me, and I feel like she's the petty tyrant, the critic, the thing that's pushing me around, I if I'm in an observing place, I just think of it as feedback. Like I'm driving my car and I hear the grooves. I'm like, oh, wow, that's interesting. That's some feedback that I'm out of balance, that I'm not quite in my loving heart, that I'm in a victim state, whatever you want to call that. And then I need to steer myself back over in the middle of my lane in my loving. And so sometimes that means I need to say a little gratitude or I need to do a little forgiveness. So to steer myself back in the middle. So if I hope that helps with the petty tyrant. Karen has a great example. I don't know, Karen, if you want to share or not. Do you want to share, Karen, about your petty tyrant
I will.
with the teacher?
I can't turn my camera on. I'm sorry. I'm having some technical issues, but I am here, and this is one of my favorite topics, and it's alive and well for sure. But several years ago, I moved to a school after the school I had been at and was completely happy at was closed. And so I got there.
You were teaching. You were teaching.
Yeah, sorry. I was a teacher, and so I went in with this attitude like, I am going to create a team at this new school and it's going to be just as good as the one I left, because I was still sort of grieving. And it turned out that the person who was the only other person in my team was not interested in that at all, and was really loud about it in her behavior in a way that was really hurtful to me. And I spent probably a good 2.5 years, and I forgive myself for this, but I imagined her getting hit by a bus a lot of times, because that was how upsetting the way she treated me and the way she treated my kids. in my classroom was just so painful. And I spent a lot of energy being angry with her and thinking she should never be with people or children again, and all the terrible things that should happen to her because she was so horrible. And I went and shared some of that with her, and she seemed very surprised that I felt that way, and sort of shocked. And I went into the next school year. So this would have been like the third year we would have been at the same school. And I just made a decision over the summer, like, I'm not going to take her behavior personally, because it wasn't really just for me. She did it with everybody. And I was just going to let her do what she did. And I was going to do what I was going to do. And I gave up the idea of having a team. And I was just going to be the best person I could be with my kids and be loving, etc. And about halfway through that school year, I found out that I got a transfer to the school that I wanted to be at. And when I got ready to leave, and I told, the staff that I was moving to another school, she cried and she hugged me. And it was just the strangest experience, because that was not how I had ever experienced her before. But it was like I got the lesson and then I could go free. And that is a great touchstone for me when it comes to petty tyrants. So I appreciate you, Cheryl, for bringing this up, because I am struggling with the idea of going to Thanksgiving. I'm having a lot of feelings about my mom right now. Part of me really wants to be there, because I don't know how many more Thanksgivings there will be with her on the planet. And I know it's important to her that I'm there. But I don't hold being there in a place that feels safe to me on an emotional level. So um, yeah, so I'm going to do some of that petty tyrant work that you talked about, because I want to go in ready to, and just be able to get to that place where I just let go of expectations that my mom's going to change, because I know she's not, and that I can just go in my loving heart and observe. And so I thank you, Jeannie, for bringing that up too, just being an observer. It could be very entertaining. Anyway, I love you guys. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you. Yeah, in that process we did too with the self-importance. It seems like it's similar in the same vein of expectations. See, that's a big one for a situation like with my mom. Like I am important, and you should know, and you should treat me this way, like the queen that I am. Okay, Peggy.
I'm going to share on this topic in my own life. And in many ways, at 73 years old, it's really just starting to unfold for me in a bigger way. My experience has been that I have lived with petty tyrants and had them in my life pretty much for all my life. And this is just my experience. I think I know that it's all has been given to me as a lesson. But how it unfolded in my life is, from a very young age, I was overweight. I mean, like from 4 on. And my weight was an issue in my family, to where it became, at least in my experience, anything I was dealing with or that I was upset with, just normal life things, it would be, well, if you just lost weight, XYZ would go away. And being young, I didn't really understand that the way that I took it was, there's something wrong with me, I'm defective. And as life went on, that stayed with me. And what I realized as I got into my adulthood, and this is after I came into MSIA and, studied for a bit, I went, oh my gosh, I don't have those people I mean, they were my family, but they were not directly in my life. And I said, oh my gosh, Peggy, you've taken on that position of being your own petty tyrant. And so that was puzzling to me that, from that point on, I realized that I had a lot of self-judgment in my life that I had created over what I would call well, several things that people are being mean to me and they're doing something wrong and they should value me the way I am. But at a deeper level, I was sad myself that I had created this. So fast forward to, I'd say, like the last 5 years, all of a sudden, it was like a window opened up for me. And I really saw for the first time, it's like from early on all the way up till now, and this is not a judgment, it's like I created those experiences, not in a negative way. It's like I came in to learn certain things, and that all of those experiences that I've had, I created to learn something. And so as a result of that awareness, I feel like now, and I mean just really recently, I feel like I'm unwinding my life and how my thought process was. And it's like, well, okay, what is really real? How do I value myself? And then taking it a step further, seeing that those people in my life that I thought were petty tyrants, that I really loved them and that it wasn't against me. And that's been a real, I don't know about you all, but for me, that's just been a real awakening, is probably the best way I know how to say it. The good news is when I am in that place, as many of you have shared, it allows me to just love someone for who they are. They don't need to be any different, certainly not for me. And that has given me a lot of comfort in my life and a lot of freedom. Just to love unconditionally. I know that may sound very simple, but to me, it's been very big. And also, one other thing that goes along with it, that because of how my thinking process, I used to call what I say is, I used to fly under the radar, which meant I didn't share really who I was. And because I figured the less ammunition anyone had, to fire at me, the easier it would be. So now at my age, it's like being willing to come out of that again has felt very odd. Like, how can I at 73 be learning such a simple lesson? But it's shown up the way it has. And I'm just very grateful for all of those learnings along the way. So that's that. And then I just wanted to comment on one other thing that Cheryl, you had brought up, which was in relationship to politics, religion, whatever, with either family or, people that, I have always stayed away from those things with people for fear of like retribution or, and I just had a different religion show up at my house last week and want to engage in a conversation. And so I decided, rather than shut the door, I said, Peggy, why don't you just talk with them and have loving, be present? It's like, I don't have to agree with them. Just, have loving present. So I found as they were sharing their point of view about the Bible, this and that, I just saw it from different eyes than they did. And, in this particular case, they were coming from a place of God as a, punitive God. And, I just responded, it's like, I guess from the place of God loves all of its creation, and so that was a new experience for me in how to be with people who have very opinionated ideas about life, religion, politics, whatever it is, that I can be with them just in loving. They don't have to change, I don't have to hide. I don't have to get angry. And again, at 73, that's a new experience for me. So I really appreciate this topic, and I appreciate all of you have shared. Yeah. So thanks.
Thank you. When you say, that you're 73 several times, and it's what's interesting is like being my age now. If I look when I was younger at someone my age or older, there's this part of me that thought like at some point in life I'll have it all figured out. I'll have my mom and dad, at peace inside of me. There will be no other layers of healing needed. I will be in complete acceptance, in my loving all the time. It reminds me, like when I was in my master's in social work program, and we had people, the professors were PhDs, so we'd call them doctor, whatever their last name was. And I remember thinking that because they were doctor such and such, that they must know everything or they have it all figured out. So there are certain expectations that I had. And so, one of them was like, by the time I'm 73, I would have whatever figured out. So I don't hear you judging yourself like you were saying, but it is curious, like, wow, like the learning keeps going. And that's why we're still here on the planet, right? That, and I think that's for me, like to realize that and do forgiveness. Sometimes I judge myself, like I should have been over that. I shouldn't let my mother bug me anymore, or whoever it is, right? So using forgiveness, I forgive myself for judging myself. I forgive myself for forgetting I'm divine, and knowing it's like this onion. We're like always, if we choose to, we're always, healing at another level and another level and peeling off more and more. So another thing that you're sharing reminded me of is the importance of being curious and asking the person, say if it's a family member or someone else at holiday, because that's what the topic is today. So we're standing around and maybe they start talking about a difficult subject, maybe that you have different ideas on. So that I found that if I'm curious, people usually like to talk about themselves and what they believe. And so if I can just set my own belief aside, so I don't, if they start talking about it, I don't have to like, whoa, how could you think that? What channel are you listening to? Or whatever that is, instead of going, wow, that's so interesting. Tell me more about that. How did you find that? And so being a scientist, being curious and letting them talk. Because somewhere under there, like we're all the same under it all or above it all, or however you want to say that. And it could lead to more understanding of where the person's coming from. Maybe there's fear, maybe there's unresolved issues, maybe there's some shred of truth in there that you're like, wow, I never thought of it that way. I'm going to get, and maybe you integrate that into your own belief system. It's sort of like take what works and leave the rest. But if you that's where I think that's where my sweet sauce this holiday is. Be curious, Cheryl. Be curious. Just ask. I don't have to be right. I don't have to be understood. I don't have to convince anybody of anything. I can just be curious. How?
Hi, Dr. Cheryl. So
Yeah,
your
really.
mom looks up to you as a professional now that you're a
Well, she
doctor,
should.
right?
She,
She should.
she really should. Well, she should have looked up to me way before I got my doctorate, but especially now. Hello.
Oh my. Anyways, so what's interesting about me is when I'm with my petty tyrants now, what the difference, and I've experienced this recently, and it's a new development, is I'm going into the situations very relaxed. And it's an absence of anxiety. And I think that that's a real key, because if I'm not anxious in a situation, then I'm able to look at things pretty much more objectively. And similar, I think, Cheryl, to what you were just sharing is like my stepmother, I think I'm saying that, no, she's my mother-in-law. Sorry, I've had 5 mothers in my life and I get confused with all the different titles from my 2 marriages that I've had. It's a total of 5, if you can believe it. One's a biological, one's adopted. So I've had many different mothers. Anyways, for me, for those people that are petty tyrants, it's accepting as they are and not how I want them to be has been really a huge key. Because once I try to make it different, then I'm in conflict. Or if I'm trying to change something. And that's something that I've really kind of learned. So with my mother-in-law, who does present in the world as very, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, it's just a truism. On the negative side is that she is very narcissistic. So similar to what you were saying, if you look at what is it that she's needing, she wants attention and recognition. And now it's up to me to give it to her or not. And if I move into that place of just looking at it, everything is my responsibility, everything is under my control, and everything is, from my perspective, all coming from me, then I need to change me, not them. And if I take that perspective, it really kind of works. And so what I do is, like what you were suggesting, is asking her questions, getting her, like, I'm really showing a lot of interest in her, and she's getting exactly what she needs from me. She's feeling heard, recognized, and acknowledged, which I think ultimately is what we all want. So those are some key lessons I've learned, is checking myself constantly about, am I in acceptance? And secondly, what can I do about it, if anything? How do I want to be? How do I want to act? How do I want to communicate so that they're being acknowledged and recognized. Not necessarily, it's kind of like, as ministers, it's kind of like, to whom much is given, much is expected. So instead of expecting others to kind of take care of us or wait for them to come, I'm thinking of what Jeannie was sharing. Waiting for the kids to come to me is, am I going to the kids, and how am I presenting myself to acknowledge the children or the grandchildren? And am I getting the kind of responses from them so that it's now a loving relationship? So anyways, those are just some of my thoughts. I love you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Hal.
Glad to be
Love
on your
you.
team.
The feeling's mutual. You made me think of, so if I was having a moment with my daughter, and I thought, wanted to tell her, like, you are my sunshine. And I was kind of in a funk, and I realized, like, well, you can't be the sunshine. I need to be the sunshine. And I was like, wow, I need to be my own sunshine so that I can be there to acknowledge people, to give them what they need, right? In ways that work for me. But I think the idea of the petty tyrant, or people, family especially, like, getting to us, triggering us. And if it is like high on the Richter scale, like, well, that is really triggering. Like, am I being my own sunshine? Am I giving myself what I need? Am I listening to myself, seeing myself, acknowledging myself? Those things that we all want, but sometimes we look for others. And it, especially being a mother now, like, I need, my desire is to put myself, like, it's from a selfless point, like just being unconditional, giving from my overflow, and filling her up. But I've got to be full first. I've got to be a sunshine to myself, so I can go, you are my sunshine, and I am my sunshine. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I hear amen. What can you tell us, Nancy Carter?
Well, I'm listening to everybody and thinking of Jeffrey Morgan and how almost every presentation he does. And if you don't tune into Jeffrey now, I highly recommend it. Anyway, almost every presentation, he says the truth, which is there are no petty tyrants out there because they're in ourselves, and that's been brought forward several times today. So accepting that, though, because I want to be the victim, and it's much easier to see myself as a victim explaining my behavior than it is to imagine that maybe I'm the perpetrator here. I certainly related to the first story about the family not recognizing the auntie who's there with them, but it's sort of invisible. Because I have the same experience in my own family. I have 3 nieces, one of whom has 3 sons. And she recently, a couple of years ago, she's very creative, and she put out a Christmas card showing pictures of the whole family, except I was missing. So I thought, well, what am I going to do about this? Because clearly I'm invisible at some point. And if it's so, then I've made myself invisible some way. And so I addressed it with her and said, I see everybody else is in your beautiful card here, but where am I? And I shared that with her and got nothing back, and expected no response. which was fine, but I mean, she's a smart person and can figure it out for herself. And in fact, she's been much more responsive to me since that time. So it's kind of cool. So that was the main thing I wanted to say, was first of all, the sharing today is really terrific. Maybe the last thing I could bring up for our thoughts is we've been mostly talking about the petty tyrant within us and how do we handle it when we get triggered. Since this call is partly about us as caregivers ourselves, or incipient caregivers anyway, the question might be also addressed as to how do we help the people that we're caregiving. And I answer that myself and have from the beginning of my career as a counselor, have had the intention of, if possible, mirroring somebody's experience back to them in a positive way and helping them appreciate their lives if that's possible. Some people get pretty deep into the well of despair and negativity, but it's possible. I think our voices matter to people, whether we know that they do or not. I apologize for my throat. I seem to be juicy in there, so I'm going to shut up. But thank you, everybody, today.
Thank you. I thought that was your wise sage voice you were bringing
sure.
out here.
Oh, that's right. That's what that was.
You're going to mirror the goodness of your life. I think that's beautiful, and thanks for the reminder as far as if we are a caregiver, what can we offer? And I see Nancy, you doing that as far as always looking for where is your next ministry, right? Where are you to give? And I see you in your life has been in alignment and like doing what you love, being around people you love, and positioning yourself and doing the inner work so that you could be generous with those around you. No matter the location or your age or anything, like you just keep doing that. So you're a beautiful demonstration of that. So thanks for sharing. And it's a great question, right? What, like, you chose, you were triggered, had a response, had a thing happen that, and you were vulnerable enough to tell your niece, like, hey, I noticed this, and then allowed her the freedom to respond however she did, even if she didn't respond, but you brought it up. And then she was able to change so it would better match what your expectation was or your desire in your heart to them. And so that's always a question with our families and friends, really. It's like, what do we say? Like, is it something we need to say to the other person? Is it something that we just need to bring to our own heart? And how much trust you have in the situation and yourself, or how much, there's a lot of variables, but that is going to be a question, especially if there's going to be time for friends and family this holiday season, of what is yours to say or not say, and then allowing the other person the freedom to respond or not respond, and just kind of put it in the light, put in the prayers, and see how it turns out. Sometimes we are pleasantly surprised with the grace that comes forward. And it seems like a lot of times people don't know that we have those feelings inside of us, and they're willing to step up to meet us. Any last last comments here as we're getting to the end of our meeting, not the end times, but the end of our meeting here this week? All right. Well, thank you all for sharing and being beautiful people inside and out. And I'll look forward to our meeting next Tuesday after Thanksgiving here in the United States, see how things went. And thank you all for participating and being part of our spiritual family.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Cheryl.
Cheryl.
Thank you,
All right.
Cheryl, and everyone. Thank you. Love you. Thank you.